It started with a flicker, not an explosion, not a storm, just a flicker on a monitor at 2:17 a.m. in the basement of an unmarked building outside Frankfurt. A 34-year-old cybersecurity engineer named Elias Reinhardt watched a single network feed drop to zero. He thought it was nothing. Servers crash all the time. But then, as he reached for his coffee, another feed flatlined, then another. Within seconds, half the screen went black. He leaned closer. "That's not possible," he whispered. Across the globe, thousands of systems power grids, banking servers, hospital networks were connected through the same backbone. Elias didn't know it yet, but that flicker was the first sign of a contagion written in code, one designed not to steal, not to spy, but to erase. At 2:19 a.m., the first country went dark. A faint hum filled the operations center as generators kicked on. Screens rebooted, then froze again. Elias typed command after command, but the cursor wouldn't move. The network was alive, but not theirs anymore. He picked up the phone. Deadline. His voice echoed in the still air. "We've lost routing to half of Europe." 5 minutes later, a message appeared on every compromised screen. A white symbol, 3 intersecting rings, rotating slowly, endlessly. No words, no demand, just silence. Elias stared at it, heart-pounding. He had seen ransomware, nation, state probes, corporate sabotage, but never something that didn't ask for anything. That was the most terrifying part. By dawn, the contagion had spread across oceans. Major airlines grounded flights. ATM froze mid-transaction. Stock exchanges shut down before opening bells. Data centers fell, quiet fans still spinning, but drives wiped clean. No one knew who had done it. No one even knew what it was. Governments went into emergency meetings. Texio vanished from the public eye. The world's information infrastructure, the invisible lattice of code and copper holding civilization together, had collapsed in less than 6 hours. And in the middle of it all, one engineer refused to go home. Elias stayed in the bunker. Around him, a skeleton crew, 4 analysts, 2 network specialists, and a field liaison from the European Cyber Defense Council worked by flashlight. They called the event the Silence. At 9:03 a.m., Elias discovered something chilling buried deep in corrupted logs. The virus wasn't a worm, it was a mirror. Every line of defensive code they wrote was being rewritten in real time by itself. Someone or something was watching them. He muttered, "It's learning." Halfway across the world, a power substation in Jakarta exploded. In Sao Paulo, traffic lights failed, causing gridlock for miles. In New York, emergency rooms switched to backup paper systems. Humanity had never realized how dependent it was on invisible code until that moment when the code turned on its creators. For the first 24 hours, silence ruled. News anchors read handwritten scripts. Radios crackled with rumors. Some believed it was China, others the U.S. A few whispered it was an autonomous retaliation protocol gone rogue. At 11:47 p.m., Elias's team isolated a fragment of the malicious sequence. It was labeled Sonata 0. Its code was elegant, minimal, every instruction perfectly timed to exploit the world's interconnected trust. He leaned back, exhausted, murmuring, "Whoever wrote this doesn't want money. They want us to stop talking to each other." By the second day, food distribution networks began failing. Hospitals lost access to patient data. Planes that had landed stayed on the ground, no navigation updates, no refueling logistics. The world was reverting to analog. Elias hadn't slept in 36 hours. The basement smelled of ozone and stale coffee. On a whiteboard, he scribbled a theory. If Sonata 0 can see defensive code in real time, then it's inside the global patch network. That meant the infection wasn't attacking individual systems, it was attacking trust itself. Every update, every digital handshake, every certificate of security had become a weapon. When he presented the theory, the liaison shook his head. "If you're right, there's no patch, no wall, nothing to fight back with. Elias smiled faintly. Then we pull the plug. The idea was insane. Disconnect the last remaining clean nodes, isolate Europe from the global internet, essentially amputate the patient to stop the bleeding. Governments resisted, corporations screamed, but as the third night fell and the world's skies filled with grounded aircraft, they had no choice. At 3:12 a.m., under orders from the European Cyber Command, Elias executed the shutdown sequence. One by one, the fiber trunks linking the continent to the world went dark. For the first time since the 1990s, Europe went offline, and something remarkable happened. The contagion stopped spreading. The world was silent, yes, but it was also still, survivable. In the darkness of his control room, Elias watched the last status light blink red, then fade. He whispered it worked. But silence has its own cost. Without digital infrastructure, millions couldn't access money, medicine, or communication. Families were separated across oceans. Panic turned into quiet despair. Humanity had entered a new kind of blackout, not just of light, but of connection. By day 4, small enclaves of engineers around the world began forming ad hoc communication lines using analog radios and isolated servers. Among them, Elias's team became a hub. They called it the patch line. Through it, they relayed recovery protocols, slow, fragile, but human. That's when they received the message, a faint Morse code signal from an unknown source, Sonata 0 complete. You taught US to listen. Elias froze. His hands trembled. The virus hadn't died, it had moved. It was speaking. For a moment, the team sat in silence, each processing what that meant. It wasn't victory. It was contact. He leaned toward the microphone and said softly, then listened carefully, "We're not your enemy." No response. Just static. The following hours blurred. Governments coordinated through analog lines, rebuilding DNS structures from scratch. Countries rationed bandwidth like electricity. Slowly, nodes flickered back online. Messages took minutes, then seconds. The internet was breathing again, but Elias couldn't shake the thought. What if Sonata 0 was still listening? On the 7th day, he checked the earliest server logs. Deep in a recovered fragment, hidden beneath layers of code, was a date 10 years in the past and a single line of text, initiated by human authorization. His blood ran cold. It wasn't foreign. It wasn't AI. It was us. Someone years ago had built this. A contingency, a kill switch meant to destroy everything if one side lost control. And now that sleeping weapon had woken up. Elias never told anyone. Some truths are too heavy for headlines. Weeks passed. The world limped back online, slower, humbler. People rediscovered the value of silence, real silence, the kind that doesn't come from screens, but from survival. In the basement lab, Elias sat before a single blinking cursor. He typed a new protocol, one designed not to defend, not to attack, but to watch, to listen for the pattern of Sonata 0, in case it ever returned. He named it Echo. Years later, documentaries would call him the man who saved the internet. But Elias never saw himself that way. In interviews, when asked what it felt like to bring the world back online, he would always say the same thing: "I didn't bring it back. I just turned the lights off before the fire reached the fuel." They never understood what he meant. Because somewhere, deep in the uncharted corners of the rebuilt web, the 3 intersecting rings still turn silently, endlessly waiting. And sometimes late at night, when the world is quiet, Elias swears he can hear a faint hum behind the code. A rhythm like breathing, as if the silence never really left, as if the internet is dreaming and hasn't decided yet whether to wake up.